Welcome to Sew Very Easy. My name is Laura, and today let's explore all about fusible webs. A fusible web is definitely different than a fusible interfacing. A fusible interfacing is interfacing with glue on one side. That interfacing stays on and it's glued onto a surface. A fusible web is paper with glue stuck on it. So if we were to separate those layers, you do have a layer of glue onto this paper, and the paper is disposable. The glue will stick layers of fabric together. There's also different strengths of glue depending on what you're looking for. So here's an example of the same company. We have an ultra and we have a light. It is a different fusible, so that glue is different. So this is the ultra and this is the light. So they're designed to do different things. And the difference is what type of fabric. And you will usually find some type of a chart or a reference right on your packages. So the heat and seal from Hemline, the Ultra is designed for thicker fabric. It has a stronger glue on it, and it does tell you it has a medium stiffness. The light one is designed for lighter things. So we're looking at lighter fabrics, so a lighter cotton onto a lighter cotton, where the heavier one could be denim or heavier things. They are both permanent. With all fusible webs, it's very important that we follow the directions for the heating, which means the ironing that we're going to do on it. Just because it's heavier or we are using something heavier doesn't mean we need to press it longer. If we overpress, it disintegrates the glue, so the glue doesn't actually stick because it has disintegrated. The most common thing to use a fusible web for is applique. So I'll show you the applique with this light. Here's an example of a word snow that I am going to put on a quilt. We need to trace this out onto our fusible web, and we need to trace it out so it's backwards or upside down. So if the pattern doesn't come reversed, you can hold that pattern up to the light and trace it so it's backwards, because this is the direction we are going to need. So I'm going to take that glue side and place it down and trace that shape so that the shape is on the paper. So what's going to happen is that glue gets onto the back of the fabric. When it's cut out, it's going to be in the right direction. And I'll show you an example of it reversed, which will be this one, and one that we've done the right way. So let's go to the iron and cover some tips on how to iron these two together. There are a few things that we can do to get our fabric prepared. The first thing is to wash the fabric, and do not add any fabric softener or a fabric softening sheet. Fabric softeners have a little bit of an oil in them. Even though we can't feel it, the oil does go into this fabric, and glue doesn't stick on oil as well. So if your fabric is nice and clean with no fabric softener, the adhesives do stick better. The next thing is to make sure that that fabric is well pressed and we don't have any wrinkles. The wrinkles can be permanent if we don't press them out first. From there, we're going to take that glue side and glue it onto the back of the fabric. What we're making is like a big sticker, and there is a little helping hand that we can get this glue to start working, and it's to heat that fabric. So I'm going to heat my fabric first, and then I'm going to put that fusible web down. So I do have the glue side down onto that fabric. Now I can press it. For the heat and seal light, I'm going to need a medium heat for the iron with no steam. Now I can press down for 2 or 3 seconds. We do not need to overpress. The other thing we can do is use a piece of parchment paper. Now, parchment paper is what we use in the kitchen. It doesn't have a wax surface on it. It's almost like a silicone surface. So if we want to keep our surfaces clean, we can put those appliques in between and then do a 2 to 3 second pressing. Having the parchment paper on will help prevent that applique piece from shifting. And if any glue slides over, it's not going to get on the iron. I did leave a little piece of glue hanging out, and you can see that that glue will not stick on the parchment paper. So there was that glue. It is stuck on the fabric, it just didn't stick on the parchment paper. The next thing we need to do is let this dry, and this is important for all fusible webs. The reason is that glue needs to dry or set. If we have a wet glue, it's not going to stick. It's the same thing with the fusible. If you don't let this cool down, the glue has not had a chance to adhere onto that fabric. So it's very important that we let them cool down. The next thing we can do is check a corner to make sure that that fusible is on that fabric. I did make sure that I had lots of room around that piece that I wanted to cut out, just because it's a lot easier to maneuver. Now that this is cooled down, I'm going to be able to cut it out. And I'm going to cut right on those lines. I did do 2 of them. So here's an applique where we see the word in that right format. And I'll show you the difference. So let's cut out our snow. So we have that word that looks sensible to us. Then we have the word that is reversed. When we remove this paper, that glue side is going to go down on top of that fabric. So the right side and the wrong side will go together. And you can see that that word that we wrote reversed is now in the right way. Where this one, well, it sort of doesn't go anyway. So it's important that we trace those images in the reverse. Now we get to iron this onto our fabric. So the first thing we need to do is just tap it with the iron, because we do not want that applique to shift. From here, we need to give it a press for about 10 seconds. And I still like to use the parchment paper. So just let it go with no steam, medium heat for 10 seconds. And we really do not need more than what is recommended. If this top fabric was a thick fabric, we might need a few more seconds. Once again, we need to let this cool down. The difference between the Heat and Seal Light and the Heat and Seal Ultra is the Ultra we do not need to stitch afterwards. The Light, it is recommended that we do some form of a satin stitch or a decorative stitch around to hold those layers together. Now I have a project that requires no sewing at all, and it's a fun project to use up little bits. When we do these appliques, we do have those little pieces that are cut out afterwards. Well, these are fun to make little cards with. I can peel that apart and iron them onto cards. And you can buy this blank cardstock. This one's actually designed for cards. It has a little fold in the area where you're going to be able to fold it and make cards. This is a fun project to do with leftover fabric. Here's an example of one card that is done just with some plain blocks. And I just put a magic marker around the edge so it looked like hand stitching. and this is now ready for me to address. There was very little of this fabric, so I just fused them on. And here is another one. If we want to just make the cards, I would recommend getting some of this Ultra. The glue is good and heavy, so we're not going to have to worry about it. And I love putting it on pieces that have big pictures on it. So I did iron it on the back. Now I can cut out some shapes. Once those shapes have been cut out, I have that glue on the back, so these now are stickers. And I'm going to be able to follow that same heat guide. Little parchment paper. And I get to hold it down for about 10 seconds. That fabric is now on that card permanently. And now we've made our own cards. This is definitely a personalized way of giving cards. I did have fabric that had snow globes in it, so I glued on snow globes and put some little snow around the outside. I do make sure my cards are going in the right direction. I'm just going to cut out those shapes. And if I have a shape that I can't get the whole pattern on, I use that to my advantage and put them on the corners. So it looks like I purposely did that. And now I can have some fun and rearrange my art. And this is where it becomes a lot of fun to make custom cards. And if you don't have parchment paper, just be sure to just place the iron down and don't move the iron. We do not want to move that applique, we just want to set it. And once it's set and cooled down, we have one more card ready to go. And because this is a fusible web that works on fabric, we are going to be able to overlap, and that glue is going to stick all of those layers together. We just need to hold it for the appropriate amount of time, depending on the fusible web that we are using. Sometimes you'll find that removing the back of that paper just doesn't come off as easily as you want. And well, that's actually a good thing. But there are two ways we can remove that back paper. The one is just moving this back and forth. You can see that it separates. And we're going to be able to get in and remove that back paper. Another way is to score this back fabric. What we want to do is cut through the paper, not through the fabric. So just that little point will go through, and what you will end up with is that little cut in that back fabric. That sort of just gives us a good thumb hold. And the paper comes right off. So with just a little bit of time and some little scrap fabric, I'm able to make some fun, personalized cards. Regardless if we have Christmas or any special occasions. And I often leave spaces so that I can write something on the front. There's many things that we can write on the front as well as inside. So fusible webs are the same, but not really the same. We need to be sure to get the right fusible web for the project that we're doing. If you do not want to do any sewing, you need to get something like the Ultra. If you want to do the machine stitching around the applique, a lighter one is definitely the way to go. But both of them need to be treated a little bit different. I would recommend that you keep your fusibles with the original package, and that way we do know what we have so that when we go to use it for another project, we know what we have. This is definitely a fun project. I do hope you give it a try. And thank you for joining me today on Sew Very Easy. Feel free to subscribe and come on back. Let's see what we're talking about next time in the sewing room. Bye for now.